There was a drone logistics mission. It was shot down. The logistics didn't make it. They sent another drone. It went, delivered the supplies, and picked up a captured PDA. On the way back, it picked up the first drone that had been shot down, so it was like a little train. Mission accomplished. The drone goes for repairs, the PDA and the hero will go home.
How old are you?
I'm 22.
Since what year have you been in the full-scale war?
Since 2022. The first months, that was the Kiev operation, the deoccupation there, all those processes. Then we went to the Serebryansky forest, and I was performing the duties of a combat medic. That means evacuating the wounded. Back then, there wasn't such high drone activity, so we were evacuating everyone who was wounded along the entire front line, infantry and everyone else. Well, I'll just tell you, for example, the position wasn't responding, and we were approaching it, not knowing if it was our guys or not, or if any one of ours was even alive there. Come on, boss, hit it. Shots. And when we were passing by the positions, this was an infantry position, and behind the positions there were like some small arms battles still going on in some places. Well, you could hear it really well right nearby. Nowadays, you can't just fly into an infantry position confidently like before and pull out, say, an infantryman or whoever you want. Right now, the kill zone is like, 20 kilometers, and it doesn't matter if you're infantry or just some pilot, or you just went in to dig a position. It's equally difficult.
Are there any situations, maybe you recall now, yes, that, well, for example, in Serebryanka or some combat operations in 22 or 23, a situation with the evacuation of a wounded person, and you realize that if there had been a UGV then, it would have been possible to save the person?
Yes, of course. Or not just save. Maybe it would have been possible to simply not lose, a comrade or a combat medic like me if there had been a UGV. I am in charge of medical support for my company. It really manifests in everything from essential first aid kits and medical tourniquets, all the way to planning out some comprehensive evacuation measures for everyone involved.
Have you counted the number of evacuations you've conducted?
About 50, I think, if you count everything, about 50.
The first logistics mission? Tell me, who did you have to evacuate?
Well, it seems you started out primarily as a hero, then you became an NRK, and eventually you ended up as a prisoner.
A hero is our fallen brother in arms?
A hero is our fallen brother in arms. Yes, well, he needs to be brought home. Unfortunately, it's not always possible to evacuate them, but thanks to the NRK, it's becoming possible to do so more often. If it were just an empty NRK, then perhaps it wouldn't be worth risking the vehicle and the people. But here, our brother in arms is being transported, there is a prisoner on the shield, and there is the NRK. Initially, it was a logistics mission for the drone, but it was shot down. The logistics didn't make it. We sent another drone. It went, delivered the supplies, and brought back a prisoner. Well, the UGV actually did a part of the hard work, a very large part of the hard work, because it drove, to the very front line. The drone headed back, and on the way, it picked up the first drone that had been driving, the one that got shot down. So it was like a little train, 2 drones. The conditions were very, very difficult for the drone in terms of there being a lot of mud. The battery was like draining because of the mud. Well, it needs more effort, In short, the mud affects the discharge very heavily, The battery was almost dead, and so they discharged and stopped like these 2 drones with the PDA and with our hero. They stopped, like that's it. And then the commander makes the decision that we need to retrieve the drone, retrieve the hero, and the PDA too, like if it works out. So an operation like that is being planned. We thought for a long time about what would be best to drive in on. There were options like a pickup truck, an ATV, or some other vehicle. But at that moment, the road where they had stopped was actually getting shelled pretty hard. So there were risks. This is the territory north of Kupiansk. The commander planned the operation in advance and briefed us on it. The company sergeant major and I went on an ATV.
Well, was it scary?
Well, it was scary only when we were just heading out. There's always that kind of nervousness before, like, starting the work. There's always that nervousness. And then once you start doing it, you just act like it's an algorithm. You've had everything laid out for you beforehand, and you just take it and do it. Drive to here, do this, do that. When the quad bike got stuck, we contacted headquarters, the commander, and said that, well, the quad bike broke down and we need to be evacuated from here somehow. And our cargo. In short, they sent 2 pickups with trailers for us. Then the guys arrived. We spent probably 15 minutes loading all that up, maybe more, maybe half an hour, like driving it onto the trailers. When you're just picking up an NRK, it can drive onto the trailer under its own power. That's easier. But here, the NRK, well, it doesn't run. It has to be, like, dragged on somehow. So that's another, like, 30 minutes probably that we were messing around there.
Thanks to Pukh and Shava for the delivery.
He was saying, like, that I'm just a driver there of a BMP. It seems that I'm generally in a BMP battalion, but damn, the fact is that he was actually in the infantry. He was coming to kill us. Well, honestly, I didn't care about him at all, like I said. Well, and we had a driver there, like, soft-hearted, very compassionate. So he was giving him water, feeding him, something like that, making his bed in the cellar. First and foremost, this is about replenishing the exchange fund. Compassion is not even a consideration here.
How much time did this entire operation actually take you to complete? Well,
from the moment they said the NRK broke down and needed to be rescued, probably about 2 hours. Well, that's including the travel time, like, with all of that. And if we're talking from the moment we took off on the quad bike to retrieve the NRK, then it was less than an hour, maybe 30 minutes.
Did it feel longer?
Oh, it felt way, way longer, to be honest. Well, of course, you're, like, damn, on adrenaline anyway. No matter how calm as a tractor you might be, the adrenaline still hits, damn, It was 3 a.m, and honestly, I didn't feel like sleeping at all. When we finally drove off, like, we finally let out a sigh of relief. Finally, we let out a sigh of relief. Calmed a little. Well, I wouldn't say that everyone was, like, super nervous, but it's still a bit of a bad feeling when everything is trying to kill you. And so we drove out, let out a sigh of relief, and we're like, finally we made it out. Mission accomplished. Drone to repairs, the fuckers to captivity. The hero will go home